Hello, amazing Immaculate Conception artists. Hopefully you watched my first video where I read the book Round Trip by Ann Jonas. And we talked a little bit in that video about positive and negative space. How in this book, every picture is two different pictures. So when you look at it one way, it has one picture, but when you flip it upside down, because you read the book backwards too, it makes another picture. And the reason that this happens is your mind focuses on, and your eyes focus on the positive space, which is usually like the thing. So if you're looking at a city, if you're looking at a lit up city, and this is the picture that we're going to base our artwork on today. If you're looking at a lit up city, if you look at it one way, what you're really looking at is the buildings, right? Because the buildings are the object. But if you flip it, you can still see the buildings, but then your eye is drawn to the sky. And so that's what we're going to do today. I thought that this was really fitting because we can't really go on trips right now. So I really wanted to read Round Trip because it is about a trip. But it's really kind of just about a trip to not very far away. They drive into the city. So, for example, I live out in Leelanau County. It would be like if I drove into Traverse City, although Traverse City doesn't have such big buildings. The other reason I wanted to choose this book and this idea of positive and negative space is that I think we can really relate what has been happening around us in terms of positive and negative. I have found that a lot of things that I thought might be negative has turned into something positive. So for example, being kind of trapped at home has been positive in a way for me because every night I get to eat dinner with my husband. I get to take my dog on a walk. So really thinking about flipping that negative into a positive. And we're going to do that with positive and negative space with art today. So here are the materials you need. You need a piece of white paper, just like regular printer paper, and another piece of colored paper. If you have black works really well. But if you don't have another color of paper, you could do it with a piece of construction paper. As long as you have contrast where the two colors you're using aren't too close together. You want them to look a lot different from each other. All right, so you need your paper, two colors, white and then either black or another color. You need scissors. You need a pencil. You can use a ruler, but you don't need one. And then you need something that can draw over your darker colored paper. So a white crayon works really well. If you have a white gel pen, that also works really well. A white colored pencil, or if you don't have any white, you could certainly use yellow or orange. So let's get started. I'm gonna draw my buildings out on my black paper in white crayon just so you can see them. But I would use a pencil first. I always draw in pencil first, but you know how it's hard to see pencil on black paper. All right, so I'm gonna take my white crayon, and I don't wanna draw my buildings too tall. And I want each building to be a little bit different, to have some variety. So I'm just gonna start over in my corner, and it's gonna be a little bit different than the one that I did at first. The more little twists and turns that you make, the more difficult it is going to be to cut out. So if you are a younger artist, the less of these little twists and turns, the better. So if I want to make this a little bit easier on me when I cut, because you have to cut your whole piece of paper in one piece, I would probably make it a little bit simpler. You can use a ruler if you want really straight lines. I am not using a ruler right now, but I probably should be. And each building can be different height. I'm going to take that line down further. You can make diagonal lines so it makes little triangles. That works really well. This works best if each one is a little bit different and the amount of space in between each one is a little bit different. So I'm not going to make them all the same height. This one, I think I'm going to have a little top to it. All right, I have my outline drawn out. And remember, you want to use a pencil. This is just a fancy looking pencil, but just regular pencil. I wouldn't use a white crayon at first because you might want to erase. The first one that I did earlier today to try it out, I used a pencil. All right, so now I'm going to cut out my buildings. When I cut out my buildings, I need to keep the bottom piece completely together. If I accidentally cut it apart, I can glue it back together on my white paper, but I don't want to make a lot of cuts right here in this piece of paper because I want it to be nice and solid for when I glue it onto my white paper. So I'm going to cut this out. Remember, when I'm cutting, I am turning my scissors and my paper to my line. So I'm not just trying to go around and curve my scissors and really hurt my wrist and my hand. I cut my line and I turn my paper so my scissors are lined up. I can also pull my scissors out, turn my paper, and make my cut. We've talked about that in art class, that when we're trying to cut difficult objects, that's a really good way to do that. When you pull your scissors out, if I'm not cutting right on my line, that is okay, because I'm going to flip my paper upside down when I'm done. So I'm not going to be able to see any of the lines that I created. So if you have erase marks or you accidentally cut where your line wasn't, like right now, if I cut up like this instead, no problem, because I'm not going to be able to see that line once I glue it down to my paper. All right, I have my outline cut out. I could use this one, my top piece. If I kept that top piece all together, I could combine them to make one long city, but for this one, I'm just gonna use one and set that aside. So this is the side I drew my lines on. Before I do anything else, I'm gonna flip it over because this is going to be the front. I'm gonna make this the back. So I have my white piece of paper, and I am going to line it up on my white piece of paper. My black piece of paper was a little bit bigger. That's okay. I can trim it off at the end. So I'm going to get my glue. I can use a glue stick. I could use regular glue. I could use just a piece of tape. I could roll up a couple pieces of tape on the back, whatever you have that works best. So on the side that I drew on, I'm gonna dab my glue. Remember, dot, dot, not a lot, just little dots of glue, but I wanna make sure that it gets all the way up to my building tops. All right, now I can glue it onto my white paper. I'm gluing it all the way to the bottom edge, or maybe a little bit further because I don't want to see any white at the bottom. I'm just going to press my glue down. I'm going to take my scissors again. I'm just going to trim off that bottom edge that I see. So if I have any edges like that, trim like that. And this is a little bit too tall. It's not going to give the same effect if the white space and the black space are super uneven. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to cut across a little bit more than halfway, maybe a little bit further. We'll see when we flip it. A little bit further. All right, now it is time to add my building windows or my stars. Remember, whatever you have to use works best. So I have a white crayon. I think I'm going to use my white crayon for this one. And I'm just making little dots on my black. So I'm not going dot, 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 dot like that. I'm pressing my crayon down, kind of coloring a teensy little circle almost. And I'm going to do that till my whole paper is full. And I could use yellow instead if I wanted to. So if I used my yellow colored pencil, I could do that if that's what I have. Then, once it's totally filled in, like that, I left a little space down at the bottom. Now it will give you that same effect as the picture in the book. So looking at it here, it looks like our windows are lit up and the sky is light. But if you flip it, looks like the buildings are a white silhouette and you can see the stars in the sky. I hope you enjoyed our positive and negative space city, and I want you to remember to try to turn things that seem negative into something that can be positive. See the positive and see the good in everything that we do. I will see you next week. I hope you've had a wonderful week and enjoyed our art lesson.